Welcome back to another episode of The Laws That Matter. I'm Carissa Kranz and Victoria Moran. Thank you so much for joining me. For those that have joined our show before, you've seen her before. She's a best-selling author, a lecturer. She's been seen on Oprah, and now she's here to talk about a very special retreat that's happening this weekend that is near and dear to my heart too, because it talks about things that I care about, which is yoga, veganism, and spirituality. So Mainstreet Vegan here is going mainstream in messaging. So Victoria, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And I love talking to somebody who shares my passions, and you just listed a whole bunch of them.
Well, you're just so multifaceted. You know, it's not every day that I get to talk to someone on the show that has, I feel like, just as much chaos going on around them, but yet has to somehow distill it into this meditative, calm messaging, which is what you've mastered. I mean, I've seen it in the way you hold yourself. I've been on your podcast. I mean, you have such a way, which is on Unity Radio, of bringing in all the moving parts of your world and keeping it boiled down to the same singular message and stillness. And you really are just good at what you do. You know?
Oh, you're very kind. And it's really tough. I think sometimes people think that people who write self-help books like I do and people who do yoga, it's like, oh, we must have always been really calm and peaceful, so we do this stuff. No, I mean, I say I write self-help books because I need help. And so my whole spiritual questing and everything that I do in life, it's a layered thing. You know, much of it is care for the other, for the animals, for the world. But there's also this part that, you know, you use the word chaotic. I came from a very chaotic childhood, chaotic upbringing. And so that lure of yoga, that lure of the idea that you really can be centered, that you really can, at least some of the time, still all that mental chatter and then draw from that when there is some chatter going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the key, I think, for all of us in this human state, in this human dilemma, how to quiet the chatter, how to live in alignment. And I love the messaging that you really are bringing to us today on this platform of yoga being aligned with veganism, because so many people, I've been doing yoga. So since I think I was 16, I got into yoga. I was a professional ballet dancer and in the ballet world, but I got into the yoga aspect of it, which was really wonderful because it took me out of the competitive nature of being an athlete, like which ballet is, and it put me into the yoga studio where you have to start focusing on your breath and on alignment. And I think so much of that needs to transcend the studio into our life and into how we live our life in the world. And a lot of yogis are unaware of that or of that next connection, which is bring.
We have it a little bit backwards, I think, in Western culture. We haven't had yoga for very long. When you think about it, the first yogi from India to come to the US was Swami Vivekananda in 1893. So in historic terms, that's not a long time. And he brought the philosophy, the Vedanta philosophy, didn't get into doing downward facing dog. Some of that came later. There was a popular yogi that came in the 1920s, Yogananda. And in fact, one of my just favorite quotations of all times comes from him. And that is, "At the center of peace I stand. Nothing can harm me here." I remember reading that at age 18. I got into yoga about the same time you did. I was 17. And to just know that there really is this center of peace. But now, very often, you go to do yoga, do asana, the physical yoga, and you get the loud music and you get the competitive nature. And, if there's a part of your personality that needs that, go for it. It's a wide open world, and that's all terrific. But according to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, where it all started, the very essence of yoga, the definition of yoga is the stilling of the modifications of the mind. And as hard as that is to do, it's much easier to stand on your head, but it's the way to get to that kind of peace. And I think it's especially important for animal activists because we know about things that go on that nobody should have to know about. And yet, because the animals shouldn't have to be going through it, we do need to know, and we need to live our lives while we're doing all this good work. So they really go hand in glove.
But people don't always know that. And it sounds like when you got into yoga, you didn't know that necessarily.
No, I loved the idea of physical movement that I could bring my soul along, because my history, you came from the ballet athletic kind of side of things. I came from just the opposite. I was a fat little girl, bad for business.
Really?
Yo, I was
No way. You're so skinny.
overweight and obese
Wow.
until my early 30s. And talk about spiritual. My life was saved by the spiritual program of Overeaters Anonymous. That's how I was finally able to commit to being vegan, because I was a terrible binge eater. And I managed to stay vegetarian through all that. But I certainly wasn't going to stay away from ice cream and cheese and that kind of thing when I was off in the world of insanity. But those two things came together, the 12-step recovery and the veganism, for me in 1983. And it's been such a gift. The yoga actually came first. And I think it was the yoga that held me together until I could find the other stuff that made a difference. And now it's my whole spiritual life, all beautifully mixed and melded together. And I'm so grateful to have one.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of life is about learning how to live a life of integrity. And yoga is supposed to be teaching us how to live a life of integrity. And sometimes we are out of alignment and we don't even realize we're out of alignment. And diet is a very large piece of that alignment that we are so trained to not necessarily connect because of our culture and society. So I liked what you said before the show, which is a lot of people who do yoga should be vegan. They just don't know it yet. And I think it's very similar to what Dr. Rao says often, which is a lot of people are of vegan heart. They just don't know it yet.
Yes. And I think of everybody on earth as a pregan. And I never treat anybody. I would never say anything like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to put non-dairy milk in your coffee. It's proudly, do you want almond or coconut? I mean, it's just,
Proudly.
there is no other option. And I think that's important to me, because when I was going in and out of veganism, and I'd be vegan for a few weeks or a few months, and I'd think I was vegan, and then I would go crazy with the binge eating and go off the wagon. But my mentors at that time, and we're going back to the 1970s now, were Jay and Freya Dinshaw, the co-founders of the American Vegan Society. And they always believed in me, and they always treated me like a vegan. It was never like, well, you were a vegan, except you have 18 demerits to your record. No, it was like, you're vegan, we get it. And then eventually, when it was able to be vegan, always imperfect, because this world is
Right.
imperfect, but consciously vegan without demerits that I knew about, it was only because they had already believed in me. And interestingly enough, with the yoga connection, at that time, the magazine of the American Vegan Society was called Ahimsa, that beautiful word that we all know now, that's nonviolence, non-harming, non-killing, reverence for life, that actually came from yoga. So we owe yoga a great deal of debt. And in addition, yoga has traditionally been lacto-vegetarian. And as vegans, we're very prone to jump on the, oh my gosh, lacto, they drink milk, that's terrible. Well, you know what? They have a 4,000 to 5,000 year tradition of no meat, no fish, no eggs. So, I've got 37 years as a vegan. I can't really line that up against 4,000 years of vegetarian ethics. So without any judgment whatever, thank you, yoga, for giving the world vegetarianism. And now we just need to evolve a little bit further and bring it into veganism. It's a very small step, but with a huge ramification for cows and the planet and arteries.
Such a good point. I mean, it's so true that the principles of yoga has been founded mostly in vegetarianism. And I've been to India, I've been to the temples, and they're vegetarian based, but then you do see them pouring gallons of milk still. Yeah, and there is a little bit of an evolution that might need to happen that takes us out of being stuck in In a tradition when that probably started, I would assume there wasn't the exploitation that happens now to create that milk for the temples
I
too.
think that's probably true. I can't even imagine what life was like in India 5,000 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been to India too, and it's a very different place from the US
Mm,
even now. But 5,000, I mean, it's
yeah.
just beyond comprehension.
Mhm.
So my work as a vegan yogi white American woman, it's not to change people in India. There are other people doing that. You mentioned Dr. Rao. We're going to be having this retreat on Saturday, and we'll have a little video from Dr. Rao about the religious and traditional history of dairy and Hinduism and India. And we'll also be hearing from an Indian vegan yogi and Ayurvedic practitioner. And I think it's wonderful to bring people in who really are of the culture that birthed yoga. And
Mhm.
so the rest of us are kind of adoptees. It was brought to us. And so I believe it was brought to us to use, to know, to share, to benefit from, but also to evolve with. And that's what vegan yoga is. I mean, interestingly enough, to me, we talk often about health and ethics as basically the two limbs of yoga. We now, of course, have environmentalism as well, but in yoga, they had the health or the physical aspects, and they had the ethics. So we talked about ahimsa, reverence for life, non-killing. This is basic for the spiritual life. And it's absolutely the number one ideal in yoga. It's the first moral precept. And traditionally, until you had mastered the moral precepts, you didn't get to learn the asana. You couldn't stand on your head until you learned to stand on your feet, with the first principle being non harming, non killing. So that was all going on in the yogic teachings. But also, these ancient rishis, these ancient teachers, were looking at a diet that would provide the kind of health and stability that could support long periods of meditation. So, as they looked at the world and the energies that make up the physical world, they saw that these energies also impacted foods, and that there were certain foods, including meat, that made people slow and dull and disinterested in spiritual things and disinterested in social justice and helping others. And then there were also foods that were so stimulating that you would just be going a mile a minute. And we have all those same kinds of foods now. I've always said that if you're at an airport and you see a really, really long line, don't worry that the plane's delayed. It's just the Starbucks. We like stimulation. But
Mhm.
in between those sedating foods and the stimulating foods, there are these beautiful foods that are very close to what the plant-based doctors are recommending now: fruits, vegetables, whole
Mhm.
grains, legumes. At that time, they did include milk from healthy cows. I don't know where you're going to find a healthy cow, and I really don't know where you're going to find karma-free
Well,
milk, so
mhm.
it's vegan.
Yeah, it's different now. I mean, I think, well, in India, cows are considered holy. So whatever happened in India 4 to 5,000 years ago, I'm sure that whatever cow they got the milk from was treated as a holy cow, and it was a totally different practice in the industry that's now been built on it. So the question is what has happened to cause the disconnect in yoga from what we see today, from what it was actually intended to be?
Well, I think, and I can't really speak for yogis in India, so I won't. But
Only
over
because
here,
I'm here.
you know,
Here. Yeah,
we
here's a big disconnect.
yes, and I think in this country, we like to pick and choose, which is fine. That's kind of the American temperament. We'll take this little part and not this other. We do that when we adopt foods from other cultures and trends of various sorts. And so with yoga, many yogis are just they went vegetarian from the very beginning. It was a very easy shift. But others, and particularly more recently, I mean, even when I got into yoga back in the late 1960s, it was very unusual and it was weird, and people confused it with yogurt, and they just knew that both were foreign and you should probably stay away from them. But now it's a huge industry. It's the wealthy part of the American economy. And so some people are vegetarian, but the majority of yogis, as I haven't been able to get an exact number of what percentage of people who practice yoga are vegetarian, I don't think it's very high because there are 32 million people supposedly practicing yoga in the US, and I don't think that many are committed vegetarians. And then you have those that are who are saying, yeah, but the tradition of yoga, it's lacto-vegetarian, it's not vegan. But what is so wonderful is that when people are able to just be flexible enough, and how interesting we're talking about yoga and flexibility, but flexible enough to allow for change. And there are vegan yogis, and some of them are very famous. We know Sharon Gannon and David Life, founders of Jivamukti. Sean Korn is vegan. They're just, wonderful ones out there. And also some change. So Swami Sachidananda, who brought integral yoga to America. And I'm excited about that because this retreat that we're doing Saturday is with the Integral Yoga Institute, that he was lacto-vegetarian because he was of the Indian heritage and that was how it had always been. But as he got older, he died in the early 2000s, as he saw what he saw, he started saying, you know what? You don't need dairy. It's not necessary. It's been traditional in India, but we can grow away from that. And so it's beautiful to see that we don't have to be stuck in tradition. We don't have to be stuck in a belief. And no matter how old we get, we can still open up to more kindness, more compassion, and more love.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're always into the mediums that are always pushing the thought process in this manner. Like I remember going to a Passover with you in New York with Jewish veg. And I think Judaism also sometimes gets stuck in the culture and stuck in the history. But then there's this whole other movement that is saying, no, you don't have to be. That's not the intention. Here's Jewish veg. Here's a vegan Seder Passover, which is timely since we're approaching Passover right now too. And being able to be flexible in yoga. I think they say flexible back, flexible mind, flexible life, right? It's all connected. And really pushing our thought process and accepting that we really do need to live a life of alignment and questioning why we do certain things in this world. So we are living in integrity. And so many people are practicing yoga because, like Tom said, it's, and you said, it's a lifestyle of a lot of the luxury and the riches, and it's turned into an apparel industry, which is a positive, I think, in a lot of ways, because there's a shift towards something positive. But now there needs to be a further shift, a further expansion of consciousness for the connection that really needs to be understood, because everyone who goes to yoga, let's face it, they're going because they want to feel connected. They want to feel rooted. They want to come back to their center. And sometimes they don't know how.
Yes. Well, there's a beautiful song. I don't know if it's by Ram Dass or about Ram Dass, but the question is asked, why have you come to earth? Why have you taken birth? And the answer is to love, serve, and remember. And I find the remember part really interesting because I think that's really what yoga is inviting us to do. It's to remember who we are. And who we are is a spark of the divine. And so that supersedes religion, culture, ethnicity, all the things that tend to divide people. And also, if you really get it, that your identity, you are the divine in expression, and you don't have to believe in God to believe that. There's something holy, sacred, eternal that really is each of us, and that is each animal. It's even in plants in a different form and degree. But when you get it, that the essence that's me is the essence of the pig, the cow, the chicken, then veganism becomes impossible to ignore.
And namaste, right? In yoga, divine in me means honors the divine in you, which goes right to what you're saying of the essence of the divine spark in us versus a pig or anything on this planet. And you bring up an important point. I think that there's a natural intelligence on this planet, a natural order, a cosmic law and order, I like to say. Whether it's the seed growing into a tree or into a fruit or into a plant, there is an intelligence here and a higher order that needs to be honored and deferred to. And there is an essence in the animals and the sentient beings that we exist with on this planet and are supposed to coexist with, not live off of as food.
You got it.
Differently. So this retreat this weekend.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What can someone expect if they were to enroll and show up on Saturday?
Yeah, well, Saturday happens to be the vernal equinox, and so it's a wonderful time to do something special for yourself. And March 20th has also, for I believe 37 years now, been Meat Out Day. So it's a perfectly planned day for Yoga Goes Vegan. So as I said, it's a fundraiser for Integral Yoga New York, and we're also working in connection with Yoga is Vegan, Holly Scotus, whom you know. And what we want to do is provide a day to really just luxuriate, to give yourself a first day of spring that just kind of it makes like a calendar separation between what was past and what's going forward. So we're going to start with a yoga class with Chandra Skamoto, who's one of the greatest yoga teachers on earth. I mean, I take her class once a week and it's just a highlight. And then we'll get into presentations from all kinds of fascinating people, and anybody who wants to go to tinyurl.com/yogagoesvegan can read the full schedule. But I'm going to talk about food, because I think for people who are new to this, it's all about, but what will I eat and where will I get my nutrients and all that? And then we're going to break up into a breakout room so that people can talk about why they're here. And this is such an accepting atmosphere. It's not going to be, the vegan police are not invited. And so people who are just looking at this and just beginning and they're uncertain are fully welcome. And also people who are like, well, I'm a vegan and I'm involved in yoga and nobody else in my yoga center is, and they all think I'm kind of out there. So, everybody can come and share. Then we're going to hear, as I said, from an Ayurveda practitioner, because Ayurveda too tends to get a little bit ghee heavy, does not have to. Ayurveda, the wonderful healing and medical tradition that grew up alongside yoga. We're going to have a wonderful panel of vegan yoga teachers about ahimsa in the real world, because we're all dealing with friends, relatives, coworkers, history, medical history, all these things that are different and can cause people to say, maybe not for me. So we're going to have 4 amazing women discussing that. One of them, Carol Bural, is the author of The Yoga Way, which is the reinterpretation of Swami Satchidananda's healthy vegetarian, because he had said before he died, we're going, in this vegan way. So she's the author of that. And then very, very exciting, in the afternoon, we'll be having another friend of yours, Representative Jeremy Gray from Alabama, where the House, the Alabama State House, passed his bill that would overturn an old law banning yoga in the schools of Alabama. So it still has to go through the Senate, and it's a hefty climb in Alabama. But he is a young vegan and yogic legislator, and he's a Baptist. This is the other thing. Yoga came from a religious tradition. It is not a religion, and it's open for everybody. So I think it's going to be very exciting to hear him. And we'll have some more meditation. We're having a special blessing from a wonderful yogic monk here in New York City, our Rishi. And it's going to be just heavenly. So hopefully life-changing for those who attend, and a little bit world changing to really say, just kind of like the first Earth Day in 1970, nobody really thought about the environment before that, but all of a sudden there was this day. So what we're hoping is all of a sudden there's going to be this Yoga Goes Vegan Day that will hopefully mark every year and open up yoga and veganism to be sister sciences to change the world.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna have to start going to all those yoga conferences around the world and preaching this message, I think, to
Good idea.
the following. I mean, what's that big yoga? Everyone goes a year. There's like millions of people. I'm blanking on the name. Do you know the?
You know, I don't. And I think it's because I've been in yoga for so long that I've kind of observed it from the sidelines as it's changed. I mean, I remember when sticky mats became a thing. We never had sticky mats. We had nice, thick, cushy mats. But then as the Iyengar system got to be popular and there were more standing poses, in came these little thin sticky mats. And then also came some of the clothing and these big conferences that I really have not been part of. And
yeah, there's some big ones you should get part of, because I think what's key here is, not to interrupt you, but yoga is a lifestyle and vegan food is a lifestyle. And these are lifestyles that are not separate and distinct, but there needs to be an awakening to merge them. And
you got it.
You're right on with this message. So what time does the event start on Saturday?
It starts at, let's see. Oh my goodness. I had that pulled up. Here we are. It starts with a yoga class at 9:30 Eastern Time. The whole day will be recorded, so anybody who's in the West Coast at 9:30, 6:30 a.m., don't worry about it. Join us when you wake up, and you can get the recordings of the rest. And we're going to do an interesting thing for lunch break. If we were in person at the Integral Yoga Institute in New York City, we'd be having a wonderful vegan meal prepared by their fabulous cooks. But since we're going to be on Zoom, we're going to be providing a PDF with lots of great information, but also with a very simple menu, kitchery and apple crisp and some things that can be prepared in the slow cooker or just in the oven. And so even though we won't be having lunch together, it will be like having lunch together. And then we will go until 6 o'clock Eastern Time that evening and close with a meditation. So it's a very rich, full day.
Yeah, full day. And it's just one day.
Just one day this year, maybe a weekend next year. And it is a fundraiser for the Integral Yoga Institute, which has just been such a champion for vegetarianism for all these years. They had a market, a food market until 2019 that was always lacto-vegetarian, no eggs, no fish. And they've closed that. And I think, if they ever open it again, it'll be vegan, I'm sure. But they've just been so amazing. And that particular center we owe to the vegan pop artist, Peter Max, who's just a remarkable person and a huge contributor to the vegan cause. But the Institute, like so many other places, has been closed for over a year because of the COVID lockdowns. The ones here in New York are stricter than in most places. So, the fundraiser will help them. However, it is a sliding scale. And if anyone can't handle even the lowest part of the sliding scale, there is scholarship help available. And they can simply write to me, Victoria, at mainstreetvegan.net, and we can get them in.
And where can they find all the details regarding any pricing? And is that all on the same URL?
It's all on the same URL, tinyurl.com/yoga-goes-vegan. I just love to say that, yoga goes vegan, because it's time. And what a wonderful thing. When you talk about Jewish Veg and some of these other organizations that are specifically for people of a particular heritage or particular interests, this is how we're going to move this thing forward. And it's so exciting that yoga is moving in this direction as well.
Well, it's important because veganism, there's a lot of reasons to be vegan and a lot of reasons that people become vegan. Sometimes it's for the environment, sometimes it's for their own health, sometimes it's for religion or for spirituality. And I think yoga is aligned with the religious, spiritual aspect of one of the reasons that is often left out on why people go vegan. I think the spiritual aspect of veganism is it's not a new conversation, but it's becoming more of a conversation that's being had, that people are acknowledging, which is
it absolutely is. I mean, I'm involved, my husband is involved in the Compassion Consortium, which is, as far as we can tell, the first interfaith spiritual center that is designed to be not just interfaith, but interspiritual and interspecies, so that people who have another religious tradition or who don't will have a place to go. And I know you're on our advisory board. Thank you so much. We're honored for that. But I think that's just one little indication. And we have the Interfaith Vegan Coalition and the Vegan Spirituality Group. And of course, Jewish Veg, as you mentioned, they do so much. So it's exciting to see that in the secular world, in the religious world, in the spiritual world, this idea is really having its day, and we need to extend that day until we have a vegan world.
I agree. But very loaded comments, a lot there to respond to. But before I do, I want to answer Rachel here because she says, is this just one day for the certification? So maybe
this is not a certification program. Hi, Rachel. Rachel may be thinking about Mainstreet Vegan Academy, and that is a certification program, or the BeVeg certification, which you can talk about.
Yeah, well, that's for products and services for vegan businesses and products. But I think Rachel wants to know about, I think, is it a yoga certification program? So it's not a yoga certification program. It's a day to immerse yourself in yoga and veganism and to come out feeling more spiritually enlightened here, Rachel.
And make amazing contacts. I mean, one of the things that I just love in life is connecting people. And there'll be a way for those who wish to be connected to others afterwards and get support that they need.
And for many, yoga is like a religion. For me, I was born Jewish, but raised vegan. And veganism is something I've more practiced religiously. Same like in a lot of ways, I felt like ballet was my religion, right? Your religion is what you do in your everyday life and how your moral compass and integrity is defined by that, which is your character. Sometimes we need religion to help us have a guide of what direction to go to. Other times we have that guide from within, and that's sometimes found through yoga and meditation. So, and veganism is aligned with that because we are what we eat.
Indeed.
Right? Like it's all energy. So the food that's on our plate, the people that we allow into our space, we're defined by our friends around us, everything around us is energy. So everything we allow into our world, whether it's a thought in our world, a friend in our world, the food on our plate, it's all defining of our energetic frequency and our contribution to this world. And a lot of times we do not realize that because we're so bombarded by everything around us on everyone's opinions and everyone's judgment. And then the news can be so negative that we often lose sight of our own inner voice.
That is all so true. And both yoga and veganism can help people come back to that. Yoga for the inward turning, and veganism for the idea of dedicating your life to the good of all. Oh, goody, Rachel. I'm so glad that you'll try to be there. I hope to see you on Saturday. Get to know you better.
I guess she has her plant-based nutrition from eCornell and also is yoga certified.
Good for you.
Yeah. So she'll resonate with your speakers.
And did I tell you, Carissa, I got yoga certified this summer after 52 years doing yoga. There was this pandemic that kept me at home. So I was able to do a Zoom yoga teacher training course. And I have to say, it's become
Wow.
addictive. And so now I'm in another one, Raja Yoga teacher training course, and going for the 500-hour certification. So that's another really cool thing. Yoga is for life. And my first yoga teacher, when I was 18 and moved to London and was able to take yoga, she is 94. She still teaches yoga, and she lives in a fourth floor walk up.
Wow.
Remarkable woman. So,
Wow.
yeah, this
So
system
she's
has a lot
walking
going for it.
4 floors
Four
at
floors,
94 years old.
94.
There needs to be a YouTube video of that. That's amazing. And she's a vegan.
She's very close to vegan.
Oh,
She's, of the old school, and I think she still has a little kefir.
understood. Well, we're all on our own process, and I think that's part of being a teacher in the movement like you are, is being accepting of everyone's process. And it's a delicate line, being able to invite them in without making them feel judged and
Well,
helping.
it is a delicate line. And I think I learned a lot from my mother, she could sell anything. I mean, she was literally legendary as a salesperson in her company and in Kansas City. And she would always say to me as a little girl, now, when everybody who knows they want your product has it, then you can go out and do cold calls. But until then, just go to the people who want it. And there's so many people who want veganism. They want peace. They want better health. And so we'll go to them.
Who doesn't want peace and inner peace and better health, really? Everyone wants to have inner peace.
Yeah. They just don't know
How to get it.
this is a way to get it. Yeah. And I'm not saying certainly that everybody has to be a yogi. There are certainly other ways to be spiritual in this world. In terms of food, I really think we're all going to have to come to the fact we can choose to eat how we want. We can do Ayurveda, macrobiotic, raw food, whole food, plant-based, no oil. It's endless, but it has to be vegan. It has to be, let's let the animals be. And then we make our food choices as individuals because that's who we are.
Do you see this happening in the near future?
Oh, I think it's going crazy. Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful what we're seeing in the vegan world. And I just think we all have to be so open to all of it, because I'm very much involved in the health part of things. I didn't get into it for that. When I went vegan, I thought I was going to gain 50 pounds, from all the carbs. But what happened was I was given my health as well as inner peace. And so I am involved in the health part of the vegan movement as well. But sometimes I hear from people there, oh, we don't want to talk about those Beyond Burgers and things because that's not so good for you. But you know what? We need to meet people where they are. And people are at McDonald's and Dunkin'. And so, yes, I think it's happening. I think it's happening more rapidly than I ever thought it would.
I think that, McDonald's just announced, I think about a week ago, that they expect to have a 50% plant-based menu in the next decade. So I think you're right. We have to meet people where they are, and veganism is mainstream now. So whether you're vegan for the animals, or you're vegan for your own health, or you're vegan because maybe you want to be a yogi and spiritual and you understand the alignment, or maybe you're choosing a vegan diet because 20% of the world is lactose intolerant. So maybe you're choosing vegan options in that moment, or maybe you're following a kosher diet, so you need free from animal material options in that moment. But the reality is the sales of vegan products, 80% of them are not by the small little vegan community, which isn't so small when there's 80 million vegans in the world. But that's the reality. So people not, I guess we might care, but we may care for the and our own reasons. But the reality is mainstream thought is, and statistics show that people care about the access to these vegan products for their own other reasons, which means our bottom line is still being met, because at the end of the day, everything is driven by our economy and sales. So if
Absolutely. And what you're doing with BeVeg is just sensational. And I feel so honored that BeVeg has certified my program, Mainstreet Vegan Academy, that trains vegan lifestyle coaches and educators. There are just so many ways to get out there in the world and make this happen. And I think with Rachel's comment, I know it is so frustrating when people just don't seem to care about anybody, outside of themselves. But those are the people, my mother would say, those are the cold calls, they're for later. We go to the people who care first. And when we get all of them, oh my goodness, we are going to have critical mass.
Right. So, and that's another thing. So in my book, Laws That Matter, which I will publish soon, it's been done, but I've been holding it because BeVeg, I need to get to a certain point where I can then show up for the book and talks on that. But one thing I always say in the book, so Laws That Matter, we live in a law-based universe, and that human law is an intended version of these higher universal spiritual laws. And we're all lawyers of our own life. We all have the access to these spiritual laws. We don't need to go to law school to learn how to practice law. It's our birthright. Just, we all have access to court. It's a fundamental right. Supreme's court, right? It's God's in your court when you're an officer of the court. So in my book, I say you get to choose what kind of lawyer you want to be. Do you want to be prosecution or the defense? Right? Do you want to live your life on the defense all the time? Or do you just want to live your life, do your life, prove your life? That's the prosecution. Your life and the way you live it is the proof and the evidence. And those that will pay attention will want to join you. And that's more productive, like your mom says, with the cold calling. Don't waste your time being on the defense. Those people have made up their minds and they're just going to argue and debate with you, and it's not productive because there's so many other people that need you, that want your message, and that will follow you and be inspired to just come along. And so when you live your life just doing it and proving yourself, that's prosecution, then you take off that defense hat, which is oftentimes living up against the resistance of what you should be doing in life. So yeah,
I can hardly wait for your book.
Yeah. I know it's a special one, when things just come to you and come through you. And that book came to me in 2017, and I wrote the whole thing in 3 months. I've been sitting on it since, because BeVeg came to me as soon as the book was written. And I knew BeVeg was my platform to make sure that like BeVeg has to happen. And then I can say, look, these universal laws, they're real. Look at how you can practice these laws, and then look how your life can work out. So, I'm also human. I'm not very patient with the process, but I think if I were to publish the book now, but I should talk to you about this since you're such an accomplished published author. I don't know if there's ever a good time to birth a book, but I don't feel like COVID is the right time either.
I agree with you. Yeah, you're going to know. You'll get the inner nudge, and then if you publish traditionally, it's going to take a while. So you just kind of leave that up to the higher power.
Yes. Let's see. Rachel says something else. I think if people see healthy, happy human and being chill, it's appealing because it appeals to the self and the nature of being human. What can this do for me? Right.
Oh, yeah. And that is what both yoga and veganism have going for themselves so strongly, because it really does change people. Mm-hmm. Even if you start this completely because you care about animals, things are going to change in your own body, in the way you relate to other people. People are going to say, what did you do? Have you been on vacation? Because you'll change, and people love to follow that. There's something in the 12-step programs that if you have what somebody else wants, they're going to do what you did to get it. Mm-hmm. So there's so much power. I think a lot of times people, they're vegan or they're new vegans, and it's like, well, what am I supposed to do now? What protest am I supposed to go to or whatever? Well, that's all great. If you can find one, by all means be active, but also remember that just living your life day to day, just having other people watch you. I mean, people have contacted me that I knew back in my hometown of Kansas City. I've lived in New York City now for 21 years, but people have found me online and they'll say, we used to work together and I would make fun of your lunch, but then my blood sugar got wonky and my cholesterol went up, and now I eat the same way you do. So you just never know who's
Mhm.
paying attention and who you're going to change.
I'm sure you've changed a lot of people. You probably don't even know the numbers. You can't keep track. I mean, I know we're talking about Yoga Goes Vegan, which everyone should attend on Saturday, an all-day event. But tell us a little bit about Mainstreet Vegan, your academy. I
Oh,
mean,
bless you. Yeah, Mainstreet Vegan Academy is for committed vegans who want to take their outreach to the next level, to the professional level in many cases. So we started out in 2012. We are now having our 31st class. We have over 500 graduates in 30 countries on 6 continents, which is very cool. And we started out training vegan lifestyle coaches. And then that became vegan lifestyle coaches and educators. But what we see now is that it's coaches, educators, and entrepreneurs. So a lot of people are coaching, they're writing books, they're podcasting, they're doing all these amazing things in the world, and others are starting businesses. So Bright Zine in the UK. That's one of our graduates. She also has a co-working space, a cafe, and a little retail shop. Riverdale Cheese. It's a beautiful vegan fromagerie in New York City. That's one of ours. Kat Mendenhall, Cowboy Boots out of Dallas, all vegan and eco-friendly. Bomo Ice Cream in Mexico City. So it's amazing things that people do in connection with their Mainstreet Vegan Academy experience. We used to be only in person in New York City. Now we're online, and you know what? Not one single bit of the magic has gone anywhere. So check us
that's
out.
nice to
That's
hear.
mainstreetvegan.net.
And the online version,
Yeah.
was that pre-COVID or was that
No, that was COVID inspired. And it's funny, Carissa, we talk about people not wanting to change, not wanting to give up their dairy or whatever it is, but I think we all have that. And I was always very protective of the idea that Mainstreet Vegan Academy was live in New York City, that you get to have this incredible life-changing experience, this working holiday in this incredible city, and we take field trips and you get to visit vegan shops and businesses, and that's all great, and we're scheduled for one in 2022 and hopefully that will happen. And yet Zoom has made it possible for people who just couldn't get here. It's a trip and it's time off work and away from your kids and having to find a place to stay. So yeah, it's terrific that we can now reach people all over everywhere. So Rachel, do check us out. mainstreetvegan.net/academy. We're in the midst of a program now, and we'll have another one starting in August.
And do you think you'll in the future keep it online or do a little bit of
Yes,
both?
but as long as I have the energy, and it's like, oh my gosh, a vegan doing yoga, I'm probably going to have the energy till I'm 106. We will do at least one a year in New York City because there is something very special about being in person. I think we've all learned how much we miss that after
Maybe you
the
can
COVID
combine it
times.
and do both. You have it in New York, and then you also have the ability to live stream it.
That's
We
another
lost
thought.
Victoria for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we lost you for a second. You
Oh,
froze.
sorry.
Anyway, any final thoughts, final words before this weekend's big event for Yoga Goes Vegan? And
Well, I just hope that everybody will check it out. And if you're not able to actually be there on Saturday, that you'll send us your good thoughts and positive wishes, because it's really important that we reach big communities like the yoga community with the vegan message, and also that we support vegans who are in these communities and who are feeling maybe a little bit left out sometimes. So that's tinyurl.com/yoga goes vegan. And otherwise, just God bless Carissa Kranz and all the incredible work that you're doing on so many levels. I
yeah.
just feel so blessed to know you.
No, I feel the same way. You're always such an inspiration. I mean, you're like what I want to be when I grow up, because you've got it. You've done it, Victoria. You've done it. You're channeling the books. You've started the programs. But I think you and I are similar in that, we go, when we have something that comes to us, we go for it 1000%. We just don't look back. If it feels right, we listen to that inner voice and we've tuned into it in some way. And maybe that secret is veganism.
It just might be.
Might be the secret. Which is like the book, The Secret, right? Maybe that's the real secret, veganism.
Ooh. Oh, that's wise.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Namaste. I've enjoyed your conversation, and you're always doing such amazing things in the world. And we will definitely promote the program this weekend, and everyone should go sign up. Put that URL back one more time. So Yoga Goes Vegan, tinyurl.com/Yoga Goes Vegan. So thank you, Victoria, and speak to you soon. I always feel sad letting you go because I consider you my dear friend as well.
Well, we'll just have to talk on a regular telephone. How classic is that?
I know. It's hard when you get so busy, though. So I love this hour. But I will speak to you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carissa.
Thanks. Now for the next portion of our segment, every week we feature a BeVeg certified vegan brand. So I'm really excited to invite to the show Carla Hirsch. Carla, Veganmadness, thank you. Nice for joining me. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you. I think you need to unmute yourself. I wonder.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Carissa.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So tell us about Veganmadness.
Okay, well, my passion for baking has always been in my heart and a part of me. And about 1.5 years ago, I started a vegan dessert line. And as it grew and more restaurants were reaching out to me wanting to carry my desserts and grocery stores, I decided to create a brand, which was June, about 1.5 years ago. And actually, because of the pandemic, I've been able to create a website in January and dedicate all my time to really sharing this dessert with everybody. It's vegan, but the best part about my dessert is I think it really is accepted by everybody. Mm-hmm. So it's vegan, but non-vegans like it just as much as the vegans.
You know where I think you need to introduce this bochi ball is Nobu Restaurant, because one of our BeVeg certified vegan gins is carried at Nobu. Okay. And I know that Nobu is well known for their dairy version of these balls, and it would be fabulous to have the vegan version served in their global restaurants.
Okay, wonderful.
Look into that.
Thanks for the tip.
Yes. So where can people find your goods?
Okay, so I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm in a grocery store. And
you're cutting out. I got you're based in Los Angeles, and then your mic cut.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So currently, I'm in about 40 grocery stores and restaurants here in LA. I have my website, veganmadness.com. There is a spot on my website where you can where to find us. So all the restaurants and grocery stores are listed there. And I do have my Instagram account. So a lot of people reach out to me there. And yeah, pretty much in the smaller to medium range grocery stores right now, but I'm getting into some of the larger markets soon. So I'm really excited about that. And we were so excited to find your certification program. That was really important to us. I became vegan 8 years ago. I've been vegetarian for 32.
Wow. So you were ahead of the movement too. You were like Victoria earlier on the show. She was a vegetarian when she was 19 years old, and then veganism came much later.
Right. So I grew up in a farming community in Minnesota, and that just wasn't part of the lifestyle there. So although I had the love of baking, which started back then with my mother, I never wanted to eat meat. To be honest, I knew at a very young age it just wasn't for me, and dairy. To be honest, I've never in my life had a glass of milk.
Me either.
You either? Wow.
No. But I was born vegan. I had my mom's milk, if that counts. I was breastfed.
That's different. But yeah. As soon as I got out on my own out of college, I was like, wait a minute, I have a choice. So one day, that's it. I cut everything out as far as being vegetarian. And then fast forward, I got married and 2 children. My younger daughter was sick all the time. And I decided to try cutting out dairy, and we became vegan, and her whole life changed as far as not being sick anymore.
Wow.
So, yeah. So we raised our daughters vegetarian and then vegan for the last 8 years.
Mm-hmm. Which goes to a lot of what I talk about with the BeVeg certification program on why it's mainstream. When I talk to retail chains and I talk to, companies that may not care about veganism for the animals, but they care about it for other reasons. And one big reason is 20% of the world is allergic to lactose.
Yeah.
20% of the world. That's a huge percent of our population.
A lot of people don't know that.
No, they don't know that. And there's a lot of products out there that you can buy that say may contain milk, egg, and dairy, and then also on the same exact label will also have a vegan claim, which is confusing for the consumer to make an informed decision, and tarnishes the vegan claim, which is one of the precepts of BeVeg that I'm focused on trying to change. I think that there's a misinformation campaign that's happening right now where it's mainstream to allow vegan claims to be on the exact same packaging as may contain allergen alibi disclosures, which is ridiculous because vegan is supposed to mean free from animal material. And those that are allergic to lactose should be able to rely on a vegan claim to buy a product, whether they're vegan for the animals or because they're allergic to lactose. It doesn't matter. Veganism needs to be respected. And that's the bottom line. It needs to be respected by the industry. It's so not. But it's happening. But
I came across a product and it said vegan, and then it said may contain milk. And yes, it didn't have the certification on there, and it was really confusing. And I'm vegan. So how does that happen, Carissa?
Most products are made in shared facilities, and there's a lot of chance for contamination. And the reality is there's no protocols in place in those facilities to prevent animal contamination or dairy contamination into the final vegan claimed product. So the factories don't want to assume liability, and the brand owners don't want to assume liability. And there's no legal regulation for using the word vegan in the world. So they're loosely using the word vegan to increase their sales. And then they're putting on their disclosure of, hey, may contain dairy. So if you die of anaphylactic shock because you have a lactose allergen, then that's on you because we gave you a warning. Because I'm a lawyer, right? So what have I done for a living? I've sued insurance companies, product defect, failure to warn, negligence, right? So by putting these disclaimers on the labels, they are disclaiming their liability, arguably saying it's your choice to buy it. You were informed. But how can a consumer truly be informed when you have 2 labels that contradict each other? There really needs to be laws in place, which is what I really want to do and focus on, because this is about consumer protection laws. It's about fraud. It's about misleading claims. And it's about so many things that we need to do to protect the consumer and to protect the integrity of veganism. I think whether you're vegan or not, I always come back to the same thing: is no one wants to be lied to.
Yeah, I agree.
And the plant-based movement is huge, and there's mostly more flexitarians out there than the vegans, but when given the choice, they're choosing the vegan choice if they can. And for a lot of times for them, it comes down to accessibility. So like, I had dinner this last week with my high school debate coach, who I've known for over 20 years now. And in high school, I was one of the only vegans in the class when I would go on these debate tournaments. Now she says that 1/3 of her class is vegan. Mm-hmm. And she says she's plant-based now. She said she's vegan too, but she thinks she's vegan, but like she's buying the vegan products in the house now, like the vegan meat and the vegan cheese, like she's buying what she can. But then when we were out to eat, it was like a little too difficult for her, right? Like for me, I went to a different part of the menu. For her, she, made concessions, but it's okay. The point is she's evolved. There's been a complete shift in consciousness. And now when she's making the concessions, she's aware that she's even making these concessions that she doesn't exactly want to make, but it's not so easy for her to make it any other way because she's not used, she's newer to this. But as McDonald's and Burger King shift their menu to be plant-based, which is a huge win, people like her are going to choose that option. And that's the reality of our world.
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
And people like her, even though they may not care about the residue, don't want to be lied to, want to be sustainable, want transparency. And when you think about what happens in these factories anyway that have the may contain disclaimers with the vegan labels,
Right.
the reality is when you think about product recalls that are happening, how many of them are because of salmonella, Ebola, E. coli, listeria, all diseases born of animal origin.
Right.
So all these product recalls, a lot of them are because of animal contamination, which wouldn't happen if it was out of a BeVeg certified vegan facility. Okay. And same thing with allergens, right? The traceability controls, all that stuff shouldn't be happening, should not be happening. So veganism is here and now and here to stay, if you ask me.
And thank you and your company for the certification program, because I remember when I became vegan, I don't remember there being so many certifications out there. And I had to really Google and research all the information that was on every label, trying to figure out if it was vegan or not. And so the certification really helps make everything.
Yeah. And just so I think another thing that's important for the consumer to know, whenever I get a chance to talk about this, I like to help educate and raise awareness on this, is we are the only certification program in the world for vegan. There's other vegan trademarks out there, but they're not certification standards. They're not accredited. They're not recognized by ISO, which is the International Standardization Organization. So BeVeg is the first, and at this time still the only certification body in the world for a vegan standard. And people don't get that because they're used to seeing other vegan trademarks out there. But the reality is anyone can draw a trademark on a napkin and pay a lawyer to register the mark, and they can say it's a vegan trademark. That is very different than a certification program and a certification standard that has gained international accreditation. So that in and of itself is a campaign to help educate the consumer, because if those that reach the BeVeg vegan certification that goes through the factory audits and the factory controls have reached a much higher standard of proving up their vegan claim, which is better for them because that also means that less liability in the end on them because they've been risk assessed. So laws need to change to protect us.
Wait to read your book. I really enjoyed your conversation.
Yeah, so my book is going to, so I actually have 2 books coming out. One of them is Vegan Law, Know Your Rights, and that's on a book deadline. That should come out this year and is important for BeVeg and the movement of veganism. And then there's the other one called The Laws That Matter, which is about spiritual law and things that I truly believe in. But I'm holding that one still. I don't feel like the time is right. But when it is right, I'll know, like Victoria said.
You'll feel it.
Yeah. I mean, I really should talk to her more probably off the air because she's been on Oprah like 3 times for her books. I mean, like,
I love listening to her.
Yeah, she's amazing. I've done her show, and she's always someone that's so inspiring to speak with. She's always making this planet a better place, no matter what you're doing, she's always moving everything forward in a way that's just so inspiring.
So we need more people like her, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. We need more people like her. You took the words right out of my mouth. So anyway, about Vegan Madness, because we're running out of time. Give us some final thoughts, final words, where your website, where people can buy you. I know you said it before, but let's do one final shout out and wrap for Vegan Madness.
Wonderful. So website's veganmadness.com. You can find me on Instagram. And here in Los Angeles, I'm pretty much all over the city, from Manhattan Beach to Venice to Silver Lake. And you can always find me, like I said, on Instagram. Reach out to me. I can let you know where I'm at. If you visit my website, you'll find all the stores on there. My goal is to get it everywhere. I want to share my love of baking and the vegan product with everyone across the country.
And then let's just put up these pictures one last time. They look delicious. Cookies and cream, peanut butter crunch, peanut butter and jelly.
I've got the oatmeal cookie, peanut butter cookie. My all-time favorite is my brand new cookie, which I'm in the process of getting certified with you, is the campfire brownie. And the new bocce ball is the Caramel Delight. It is the peanut butter rolled in a coconut caramel topped with salted peanuts. So it tastes kind of like a healthy Snicker bar. And yeah, we have our lemon zest cheesecake, which is new as well.
People must love inviting you to parties.
They do.
You probably bring all the desserts.
Yes. I love baking it. I love eating it, and I love sharing it most of all.
Well, next time I'm out in LA and I'm at, I co-hosted one of the episodes of New Day, New Chef with Jane Velez Mitchell, which is on Amazon Prime and public broadcast stations across the world now, actually. Next time they do a taping in studio, that was canceled because of COVID this time. Sometimes some brands get to introduce at least to the backstage celebrities and sports athletes and vegans out there that are true movers and shakers. So we'll have to make you bring in some of your Vegan Madness desserts backstage and introduce it to us.
For sure. It would be my pleasure.
Yeah, I think everyone would be really happy.
I think so too.
All right, Carla. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And yes. And for everyone else, thank you for joining us for another week of The Laws That Matter. I'm Carissa Kranz, and we'll be back here next week, same time, same place, Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time and 9 a.m. Pacific.